Dallin Hanchett, welcome back to the show, man. How's Juneau treating you?
Oh, it's good. Like it's raining. We finally actually had quite a bit of sun, so it's been nice. But thanks for having me back on.
No problem. We had the beginning of waterfowl season, and I'm only 1 year in, and so I still have a lot of questions. I'm somewhat rigged up, but I'm kind of looking to take that next sort of level. So I wanted to have you on here as someone who, even though you're new to Alaska, you have a background in duck hunting, and then you have access to all the new cool stuff since you're the hunting manager at Sportsman's Warehouse in Juneau. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm the hunting manager. Moved up here. It was in November, so it's been almost a year up here.
Nice. So I have an 870 Express because I was told that was the durable sort of hunting 101 when it comes to ducks. So just starting there, and it's in a 12 gauge. What's the difference between a 12? Obviously, there's the difference is the size, but why would some people hunt with a 20 gauge over a 12 gauge, or is it kind of just you go with a 12 gauge?
Um, you know that really just depends. Obviously how old the person is, how big they are stature wise. Not everyone can really hold up to a 12 gauge. Not that it's crazy, but I mean it's got some kick to it. Majority, most people are going to be able to run a 12 gauge. I started when I got about 13, maybe 14. I handed over the 20 gauge and started shooting a 12 gauge. Actually, the same gun you've got, the 870 Super Mag. It's really dependent on how experienced someone is. But with that being said, I've probably shot just as many ducks with a 20 gauge as I have a 12 gauge. I used to hunt a lot when I was younger. Shot a lot with 20 gauge. My dad still takes his 20 gauge out when he doesn't want to deal with the actual weight and the recoil of his 12. So majority will go with 12 gauge, but 20 definitely has its place.
Mm-hmm. So what about type or cost? Because in anything that has to do with the outdoors or hunting, you can spend as much money as you want. The 870 was appealing not only because it was kind of a bare bones but very dependable, but is also fairly inexpensive.
Yeah.
The difference between like your 870 and like one of those Remington Versa Maxes that's like $1,000. What do you get out of that extra money?
So yeah, I actually have this conversation almost daily, especially at this time of year. Realistically, a shotgun is a shotgun. It's a scatter gun, so it's not necessarily that you're putting a $500 barrel into it to get sub MOA accuracy. You're throwing a bunch of metal into the air, but it's not always quite that simple either. There is a difference between, say, a $250 shotgun and a $2,500 shotgun. Are they both going to kill birds? Absolutely, 100%. And it's more going to go down to the user as far as your efficiency with the firearm. But I mean, my first shotgun I ever had was a 20 gauge 870. Then I went from the 20 gauge to the 12 gauge 870, and I ran that for a few years until I actually caught a wad from the shot shell underneath my choke tube, and my choke, it blew out, so my barrel was bulged. So I ended up going to that around $2,000 range, and I hopped into a semi-auto inertia driven. I shoot the Benelli Super Black Eagle 3. Ooh. And I absolutely love it. But I also sometimes will hunt the pump. It's kind of almost a nostalgia thing at that point. But really, anyone say someone just starting to get into it, they don't necessarily need to go drop $2,000 on a shotgun or $1,000 on like a Versamax or a Beretta or a Benelli. More birds are probably killed with a pump gun each year than a semi. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. There's a romantic notion with some of those the break action shotguns, just beautiful looking guns. But when it comes to would I even appreciate the difference? Probably not. So, but at some point you move up. So I guess I know I'm a long way off, but I wouldn't put it past me at some point if I really like duck hunting to move and upgrade. But
yeah, but that's even to say, you might be in love with that 870, and you might run it until the day it doesn't run anymore, or There's not really a right or wrong to that. I really like going to that semi-auto, into that little higher end shotgun, just because of how much time I spend out in the field and just the overall reliability and the conditions, especially up here now that I'm in Southeast.
Mm-hmm.
Just the pounding it with salt water and coatings that are put on the guns, the actions, the recoil systems, whether it's a gas system or inertia system. There is it isn't just a $2,000 scatter gun at that point. There are some differences there, but not everyone needs it.
Yeah. What about ammo? What give me the little lowdown on the simple definition of what you're looking for when you are looking at a shot size for like a large duck versus a geese. Going from your shot size, how would that change, or what are you looking for there?
Yeah, so like you're saying, it's essentially going to be on what birds you're targeting. Like this weekend, I knew when we went out that it's early season, so there's probably going to be a lot more teal than big ducks, but you definitely mixed in with teal, mallards, widgeons, which kind of hits right there in the middle between a teal and a mallard. So I actually just went with a 4-shot, and I had some 2-shot just in case. I knew that it was just going to strictly be big birds, but I was running a 4-shot, which is a smaller shot, more BBs out in the air, especially for those fast flying teal. Those suckers, they can get cooking fast, and you want more BBs for that. If you're going to throw like a goose load, I'm normally running a BB load or a 2-shot. Generally, if I know I'm going to be specifically targeting geese, I do run 3.5s versus a 3-inch shell, and I run a 3.5-inch BB load. Not necessarily always fun to shoot though. After shooting, a few of those, they start to beat you up a little bit. So I'm not always running those big loads. Those smaller shot sizes are a little more forgiving on your shoulder if you're spending a lot of time behind the trigger.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that makes.
But I'd probably more so go 3 shots and 2 shots. Kind of what my go-to is a 3-inch 3-shot. Just if I had to pick one load to do a little bit of everything. I've shot geese with 3-shot. It all just depends on how far your shots are. What choke you're using. If you're using a tighter spread choke or a wider choke, it all just depends on what shot I'm going to choose as well, and how my gun actually patterns with that specific shot or that specific brand of shell.
What have you found so far up here? This is your first like full season, but what do you assume you're going to use the most, or how has that changed as far as the choke and everything goes?
So I'm just running my factory choke right now. I think I've got my modified in right now, which is getting on the closer side to the tighter choke, but still gives me a little bit of spread. I really liked my modified. If I was still back home where we got a lot of birds that like to long land, which is not right in your decoys, or they're going to be higher passover shots if you're just passover shooting. I did like having, I've ran a full choke and I liked that, but you've got to really make sure that your shot's on with that, because you've got a smaller margin of being able to hit them. But I've been running modified. And then the shot size just depends if I'm going to be out in, we got the Mendenhall wetlands here, which is a lot of either jump shooting, passover shooting, or you can decoy depending on the tide, or going out on a sea duck hunt, which then I just want the, this kind of almost the cheapest round I can get, because you're putting a lot of shot into those birds because they're tough.
Yeah.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
Yeah. How do you know when you want to change your choke, or when it would be a good time to change the choke? Or is it
Really?
that if you're just getting started off, you shouldn't worry about yet? Just hit some birds, get them down, and then figure out how you shoot.
Yeah, well, a big thing too to kind of back up there, like as you're getting into it, one thing that I suggest a lot is pattern your chokes. Most guns come with more than one choke. I mean, if you go out with your buddies when you're new and you're kind of finding out how far your shots are really going to be, take your gun out, have a piece of cardboard, do a 2 foot by 3 foot piece of cardboard, put it out at 10 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards. See how your chokes pattern with your specific loads or just however what you're planning on using. I like the modified because I can get a little bit of everything out of it, and I really don't change my chokes too much. It kind of hits a little bit of everything, but I generally try to wait for the birds to get pretty close. I don't like sky busting and taking super far shots.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned the wetlands up there and different that you could use decoys. Are decoys necessary? When would you want to use them? And then how do you select areas to use them?
Yeah, so I'm still kind of learning on that one for up here. I went out with buddies, or with a buddy this weekend. He knows a little bit better than I do. And I mean, first day we went out, we took 8 decoys. We didn't even do a full dozen decoys. And we kind of set up a little bit. And none of the birds were really too interested in it. Most of our shots were passovers and maybe jumping them out of a slough as the tide was moving. Kind of what I've noticed as far as if I know I'm gonna want a decoy, I'm gonna watch the tide, because that's the tides. I wouldn't have ever realized it until moving up here and hunting on the coast, how crucial the tide is for just about any type of hunting up here, whether it's big game or fishing or even waterfowl. Is you time it a lot around the tide. It's not waking up a half hour before sunrise and getting that golden hour of the flight. Sometimes the flight's going to be different with the tides. So if I got a slower tide and I'm going to be hunting a higher tide, I might throw some decoys out more so than low, or vice versa, depending on if you're on some water that is going to be hanging out for a while, and it might be the only water the birds have to choose from. You might throw a few decoys, and depending on the time of year, I imagine that mojos could, which are spinning ducks, where the wings spin, that they could be the ticket too. Sometimes they're also something that could when the birds get a little more wary, that could flare them off.
Mm-hmm. What are you looking for when you look for water? When I was looking at the Ducks Unlimited magazine, you look through there and it's all talking about, find a nice little pocket puddle, this and that. But there's so much water up here. Are you looking at freshwater, lakes, ponds, or is it just mostly the wetlands up there? Or if I'm scouting, what should I be looking for?
Up here, it's mainly salt. There's some interior lakes up here, but from what I've been told, there's just some local ducks hanging out up there. You don't really get any pushing through. We've got the channel, the Gastineau Channel up here. And sea ducks will just bomb through that all day. They won't even look at your spread. And if you're hunting from the shore, but as the tides move, the birds move. They can't just sit on the water if the water's constantly moving. Once it starts getting low, they'll kick up and they'll kind of scoot around, and sometimes they'll look for a spot to lay. So, theoretically, I'm going to be looking for something, if there's a spot where tide's low, but some water's, locked, and it might only be ankle deep. I might be throwing a few decoys in there and trying to catch these passovers as they're coming through, try to hammer on the call and try to get them to turn and see if they want to just come loaf for the day. Depends if they're in feeding mode, if they want to just loaf on some water or on, I mean, they're not even always on water. I've noticed that up here, they'll just be sitting on, mud and just kind of dabbling in water they couldn't even sit on, but they're just walking through it, kind of milling around while the water's deciding what it wants to do.
Yeah. Do you think that makes it more difficult, less difficult, or is it just, it is what it is when you compare considering the tide up here versus what you're used to?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of would say it is what it is for now until I kind of learn it a little bit better. I loved it back home because, water doesn't move. You've got your good morning flight. You might catch a mid-morning flight, and then you go get breakfast or lunch. Maybe go hit a couple spots on the river and, jump shoot, depending on how good the morning hunt was. And then you hop back out for the evening hunt, which I've noticed it's kind of like that here too, but it's very much tide dependent. And you got to watch the tide so you don't get stranded, because you're sitting out there in between a couple sloughs of water and you're trying to hunt a specific spot of water. And once that tide really starts rolling in, you got to pull decoys unless you've got a lot of line on them. Otherwise, you're going to start losing decoys, and you might be standing on a little patch of dry land and you're in some pretty deep water. So you kind of got to find that happy medium I've started to notice up here.
Yeah. It's pretty fun to be able to, have all that accessible, but I'm trying to figure out exactly when and where. Again, you read about the start times in the early morning and the evenings, but there are times when I was going out yesterday or last year, and it was just, middle of the day, didn't really matter. It was just kind of going through. So that was kind of nice, I guess, but it just seems like it's much different here, and it doesn't seem like there's a ton of material or resources when it comes to waterfowl hunting in Southeast Alaska. And I don't know if it's just one of those things where it's so easy, you just go out and shoot stuff, or if it's just not a lot of content out there about it.
I would kind of agree with you on that. I've noticed that when I moved up here, I had the fresh eyes to Alaska, and then just I want to do it all. I want to do it all. And when I got up here and I saw kind of our waterfowl selection at Sportsman's, I expected it to be bigger. I'm like, we're sitting here with all these great opportunities, sea ducks, and, you might have brant moving through, not quite this far down, but potentially, just Alaska waterfowl in general. And I was kind of surprised at how little people really jump into waterfowl here. I noticed that at the beginning of this season, it's gotten a little bit more traffic than it was when I got up here in the last couple weeks of season. It definitely saw quite a few guys out. Opening morning still wasn't crazy. We might have seen 4 other trucks out there, which doesn't seem like much for how much water you're really hunting out there in the wetlands. But yeah, I'd say that there's some diehard guys, but honestly, I'd say waterfowl in general, I think it's slowing down, and I think we need to get more people into it.
Yeah. It seems that one of the big excuses people would use, or reasons, reason excuse, there's a little semantic difference there, is that it's hunting season. But September seems like it'd be the perfect time to take a couple of weeks off while the deer get into their rutting phase, to go out there and try to get some early season ducks. So that's what I'm super fired up about for these next couple of weeks before rut really starts turning on. And there's still enough daylight in the afternoons to maybe go out and find somewhere, or take the boat out a little bit and try to hit a tide right. So it is a little bit surprising, but it is kind of overwhelming. You spend all that time in August, maybe you spend a lot of your days off hiking around looking for deer, that, to add in a whole nother quarry, and a quarry that doesn't yield a ton of meat might not be worth the effort for a lot of people, I guess.
So I've noticed just in hunting in general, and just how long I've been hunting, you're either a waterfowler or you're not. And there's really not much more to it than that. It either grabs you and just keeps a hold of you and you just run with it, and other things almost go by the wayside. Once it's duck season, it's duck season. Or you're just the casual guy that might go out once or twice a year with a buddy. You're either extreme into it or you're really not at all.
Yeah. A hunting buddy of mine and I went out last year to this little island, and there was some geese that had landed off this little point, and so we snuck around. Like it totally felt like we were sneaking up on a deer, and he and I had pretty much no idea what we were doing. And so we're hugging the shore, and he sees some widgeon, and so like we're figuring how we're gonna get out to because you can't shoot through the forest. We're figuring out how do we make a move to get free of the forest, to either get the geese or the widgeon. And so we plan all right, well, I will go for the geese on the left side here, and I will not swing to my right. He's going to go after the widgeon, and he will not swing to his left. And I kind of dropped down to this root wad, but I couldn't get clear of the spruce trees branches that were going out. I could see the geese. I was just pinned down, but it was every bit as like exciting as a deer hunt. Except like right there, and there's so many of them. There's a dozen of them. Like, oh my gosh, and they're right there, but you don't have a window because it's going to spread it. And so eventually, he said he just kind of lost the nerve, and he tried to just kind of emerge and then get them as they flew, but they flew directly away. And then I didn't get a shot at the geese, but we just kind of laughed afterwards because it was the novice duck hunters not knowing what we're doing, applying the only hunting tactics that we knew, which were deer, and coming up, there's dozens of them, and you don't get one. But it was pretty fun. So I could see how people could be really all about it.
Well, the thing with that is I've been hunting waterfowl since I was 8. I still get that way every single time I come up onto a bend in the river or a slough of water, or I know that there's going to be some birds there. I love jump shooting because you never know what's going to happen. And I mean, sometimes you commit a half an hour to getting on birds, and it either comes together or it doesn't. But I don't think I ever regret, even if I don't even get a shot off. Like, I just love jump shooting, and I feel like a kid when I do it. 100% feel like a kid. And I think we lose a lot of that just in hunting in general. It's just so much about let's bag animals, let's fill tags, let's get freezers full, that you kind of lose it's waterfowl just gives that experience to me that I can almost feel like a kid again. And I love it. Every single time I go out, it's different.
In the same way that people get really excited about shooting big bucks with big antlers, the duck hunting world of the, hashtag body count, is prevalent. I'd be happy with 1 or 2. And I got 1 or 2 last year because I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not. Eating scoters, is this going to be something that I like? I'm glad that I did like it, after a little treatment of milk and salt water. But that's a commitment. If you're not a big fan of eating sea duck and you're getting, between you and a couple of buddies, dozens of these sea ducks, that's a lot of meat that might not be as palatable as deer.
So most guys don't do sea ducks up here because they think they taste bad, which I would disagree with them 100%, because my favorite duck I've ever eaten was last December when I got up here, and it was surf scoter. And I was told that it is the worst tasting duck there is. And I thought it was the best.
Huh. Interesting.
It's all in how you prep them and cook them.
Yeah,
really.
I got that.
Which with anything game.
Yeah. How did you prep it?
So I like to cook them I got a couple different ways, but if I just pulled it right off the bird, breast it out, I don't pluck whole birds. I get as much usable meat as I can, but there's a lot of effort into plucking them, for just a little bit extra. So I just usually breast them out. And for these ones, my wife has never eaten duck before. She had just been introduced to deer and elk, the year before. So still relatively new to eating game. And I was so worried that I was going to give her surf scoter, which I had heard was so bad, and turn her off towards ducks and not wanting to eat them. So I have to eat them all. But the way I did that is I breasted it out. I put some steak seasoning on it. I don't go super heavy with seasoning in general. Just I like the natural flavor of game. And I just pan-seared it on one side, and then I flipped it over and I cooked it to a rare, almost a medium rare. And I found that if you go past medium rare at all, you've overcooked it. And that's where you get that muddy, mucky duck taste that everybody hates. Mm-hmm. But you got to get out of your head that it's a bird, because normally you're thinking, bird and poultry, you have to cook it all the way through. If you see any blood, it's undercooked, but that's not the case with ducks. Leave them rare to medium rare, and they will taste a lot better than cooked all the way through.
Yeah, I'd heard that. And then also the storing of a lot of that sharp flavor in the fat. So if thing with
Trim it.
like
Yep.
slaughter, making sure you get rid of the fat or to breast it out versus plucking, like you shoot a mallard, you pluck that because you can use the skin in the cooking process and it doesn't taste as fishy.
Yeah, I've used skin on. Skin on works as well. Generally, I don't skin on, but if you do skin on and then you use that absolutely helps to keep a lot of that out of that non-palatable taste, as you were saying. I've done skin on, I've done skin off. Really, I just think it's just not overcooking it is the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm stoked, man. I had a couple in popper form, which you could have a tire. It doesn't matter. But if you get like a nice jalapeno and some cream cheese and some good nitrate-free Hempler's bacon, like you can't go wrong. It tastes so good. So that was when I was scared at first. That's how I did it, just because I knew I was gonna like the jalapeno, the cream cheese, and the bacon.
Yep.
So if I
we
didn't
actually,
like the
funny
Scoter,
you say that, we made the teal that we shot this weekend into jalapeno poppers.
Dude, it's like cheating, but not. It's so good.
Yeah, and I've also done probably my favorite as a kid, and this is the way that my mom made it, just because she hated duck. Was we actually will crock pot it in apple juice, and that's our little secret for all game meat. If you don't like gaminess, whether it's deer, elk, moose, or anything game, apple juice, just crock pot it in apple juice, and it takes that gamey flavor out. But we would do that, get it, all day, crock pot it on a medium heat. And get it to where it'll start to pull apart like pulled pork, and then add your favorite barbecue sauce to it. And that's probably one of my favorite childhood memories, is eating pulled duck sandwiches when I went to school.
Oh, I like that. That's a good call, though. That makes sense. I want to get back to the gear a little bit here. Calling and calls. What are your recommendations there?
Whatever you sound good on, to be honest. I've got expensive calls. I've got cheap calls. And it all just depends on what birds you're hunting too. And this goes back to decoys as well, is how pressured are your birds? How wary are your birds? This time of year, I always say that, we're not hunting migrators. We're hunting local ducks. They get pushed a couple times. They get super wary, and they're super hard to get to decoy, which includes, calling to get them in. But get proficient on a call. I practice all the time, and I've been blowing on a duck call since I was 8. It was when my dad gave me my first $5 call. I'll practice in my truck. I'll listen to YouTube and listen to my feeder call might not sound the way I want it to, or my hell call might not sound right. And so I'll listen to other ducks, and I'll actually listen to people calling and live ducks. I'll just listen to duck chatter. And you'll kind of learn as to how you want to sound. But other times, I put the call down, because sometimes they don't want any talking at all. The decoys do all the work for you.
Okay. What's an indispensable item when it comes to, outside of obviously a shotgun and then the right shot for your birds? What's an indispensable item, or like top 2 things you got to have in order to make it work, be effective?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Depending on how you're hunting, waders are a huge deal for me when I'm waterfowl hunting, because most, it's in the name, water. You're in the water. I gotta have good waders, and I break that down into good base layers and stuff too, because especially up here, the water stays the same temperature year round, which is cold. It doesn't get nice and warm. So, you gotta keep your core and your legs. You lose a lot of heat from your feet. And so I always make sure that I've got just a good base to my overall system of layering. And layering is huge with waterfowl, because I hate walking with decoys on my back and sweating, because I have one big coat on, and then I get my decoys set, and then I'm cold because I'm sitting in 20-degree weather, and I just built up all this moisture in my gear, and now I'm sitting in it and I'm starting to get cold. So definitely my clothing would probably, I mean, that's not one piece, but as a general, good clothing makes a big difference in your comfortability, and your comfortability is going to overall help your success because you're out there longer and you're enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. Misery drives people in. It drives me in. Once you get wet and cold, that's tough.
That's why a lot of people don't waterfowl, because that's 99% of waterfowling is wet and cold. Because I will take a horrible, cold, stormy day over a nice blue sky, sunny day for waterfowl.
Why is that?
9 times out of 10. We call them blue sky. They fly high. So we call them bluebird days. If you can see the sky, it's probably not going to be the best day for calling ducks in, because they can stay up high in the sky. They don't have clouds. They don't have overcast pushing them down. I heard, I don't know the validity of this, that when there's a weather system that's pushed in, the ducks, their ears get messed with the pressure. And so that might be a reason to why, but visibility, ducks like to have visibility. So, when it's less than ideal visibility, they stay low. So they see your decoys are a lot more likely to commit. If it's rainy and sleeting sideways, they don't want to be in the air. They're going to see you. They're going to see the decoys. They're going to bomb right in, or they're just gone. So I will take the horrible, horrible days. That's when I get most of my good days of limits. Bad days.
Interesting. Some people say the same thing about deer hunting, is because it shields so much of that. The wind swirls and might dilute the scent a little bit. They're more tolerant of sound and motion. So yeah, some people say that some of the biggest buck days they've ever had are the days that it's just been terrible weather. And
before or after a storm seems to be money for me for just about most of my big game hunting. They're up and active before, and they're up and active after.
Yeah. It's nice to be out on those nice warm days because you're more comfortable, but you have to be okay with the possibility or the likelihood of it not being successful. So it's a lot of times it is one or the other. I'm going to enjoy this day, be nice and comfortable, or I'm really going to get down to business and get serious and try to get something down.
Absolutely. And that's why I say that your gear, your actual, like your waterproofing and your layering is so ideal and necessary for if you're going to really get into waterfowling, is to be comfortable, because you are putting yourself in some of the most uncomfortable situations that there are.
Yeah. So I'm sure both have the potential to be super expensive, but you've done elk hunting. So like elk hunting versus waterfowl hunting, which one can be more expensive because you accumulate more and more gear?
Waterfowl 100%, not even hesitation. I was just, so I know one of the guys that works at Sitka Gear, and I was just messaging him on Instagram the other day, and I kind of made a joke with him where I was like, I've only been doing this for 15 years. When is it going to stop taking all my money? And he just laughed, and he says, we do what we love, and just so happens to take our money. And that is so true with the waterfowl. You can run same decoys for 15 years, but you could buy new decoys every year, or re-rigging them. Just with anything, you can try to buy the newest and latest and the greatest. You don't necessarily need it, but I put a lot of money into waterfowl gear, a lot of money.
I had some buddies down south when I lived down there that loved to golf, and every couple of years they'd buy new clubs, and then it's like $100 to play around, or if you're a member, maybe $1,000 or $200 or $1,000 per year to be a member. And so we put our money into the things, like you said, that make us happy. But I think it feels a little bit different when you can get some sort of culinary reward. Not that it's better, people like to golf, and that's great, not to begrudge them at all. But yeah, it is. You put your money towards stuff, and it happens, and it's part of the thing, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're a gearhead, it doesn't help at all either, because they always come out with something new.
Oh yeah, for sure. Any closing thoughts about duck hunting up here, waterfowling up here, or any tips for myself or other newbies out there that are pretty excited about getting out there?
A really big tip is, if you know someone who does it, just go with them, and ask questions. I wasn't really self-taught on waterfowl on most things. I had my father who taught me a lot, and just going out with buddies, take them to your spot so they'll take you to their spot, and ask questions while you're out there, or just find a mentor. You'll get the gist of it once you go out a few times. But I don't think there's a time that I go out duck hunting that I don't learn something that I apply to my next hunt.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you being on here again, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, take care, buddy.
You as well.